back, and we're here with Eric Seidel, one of the leaders for the Flutter project, one of the founders of the project, here to answer some questions. And I have a few viewer questions already. Wim is still taking a look at the stream. And so let's start off. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Flutter origin story? Because I've told it to people, Flutter started as a quest for speed, and I'd love to know that I'm not lying. So.
No, that's totally right. Flutter did start as a quest for speed. So Flutter, in its very earliest incarnation, was just a very cut-down version of Chrome.
Okay.
We took Chrome and we just allowed ourselves to break compatibility with the web and chop out lots of stuff and see how fast we could make it go.
Things that were in there for older standards, compatibility with older things?
Just all sorts of things. The thing that we built wasn't able to render any web pages, but it could run our benchmarks. And when we ran our benchmarks, they were 20 times faster, and so we knew we had something there.
Okay, so you had a rendering engine, and then I've heard there was sort of a search for a language at that point. Can you tell us about that? Because at one point, Flutter was written in JavaScript, is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
So we actually went through several iterations. We did have our rendering engine. It was all in C++ originally, and then we started writing more and more JavaScript code.
Okay.
Eventually, we had some trouble with the JavaScript code, and so we went searching for another language. And then eventually, all the C++ died away, or most of it. And once we had found Dart, and that worked so well for us, we just wrote more and more and more Dart code.
Okay. Cool. And where did Flutter, the name, come from? So we got a question. I saw that in the stream earlier. Where did the name Flutter come from?
And we actually have heard this story before, but it's so good we have to get it again.
So it turns out naming is really hard. So we did these things called trademark searches, where you make sure that you can use the name in various countries and all that. And they're not cheap, and they take a long time, and we did a bunch of them. And we didn't find any names that we liked that we could use. And so we got a little desperate. But it turns out that Google has a cache of names that from companies that they bought
on
that they're not
occasion
using.
we acquire companies.
Yeah, or they turned down a name for whatever reason. And that's where Flutter came from. It was a small startup that they had bought.
Okay.
And the product had turned down, but the name was still there, and that's how we ended up being Flutter.
That is wild. All right. Well, we got another question here. This one comes from Twitter. The account is Lucam Tudor from Cluj-Napoca in Romania. So, buonasera. And can you talk a little bit about the evolution of Dart and how Flutter influenced perhaps some of the features that were in Dart 2.0? So were there things that Flutter needed from Dart that the Dart team then sort of came back and said, yeah, we can put those in the language for you?
Oh, totally. There's so much that's been added to Dart in the last few years, specifically for Flutter. The trailing commas for the formatting, the int to double, the AOT support in general. That was a huge feature that was done by the Dart team for Flutter. Lots of Flutter-specific performance enhancements. Just lots and lots of work that's gone into Dart to make Flutter awesome.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. So this one comes also from Twitter. This is from Terapfelis30. Will Google introduce a Flutter certification program similar to ones that exist for Android?
So I've heard that there are these other certification programs for some of the other products, which is awesome. I think that those are things that we would think about a little bit later on. I mean, we just hit 1.0 today. So I think that's a good idea, but I think that's probably going to take a little while.
Okay, cool. All right, and this is one last one, sort of a general question for a lot of the people watching. How can someone looking to contribute to Flutter best make an impact? So if you're watching this and you're like, I really like Flutter, I really like this community, I would like to be part of it as a contributor, what are some of the best ways to do that?
Other than the fact that you're hiring, right?
Yeah.
It is true. We are always hiring.
Yeah.
We have tons of open positions. To contribute to Flutter, so we do have a bunch of documentation on GitHub about exactly this, and there's lots of ways to contribute beyond just even engineering. There's tons of triage to do. There's obviously all these people who are running events today in support of Flutter Live. That's contributing to the system, right? So yeah, there's lots of engineering specific tasks that are listed on GitHub. Bugs to fix. We even have an easy fix label to help with early bugs. There's these contributing docs on both the engine side for those who like C++, as well as the Flutter framework side.
Sure.
For those who like Dart. But there's lots of docs up on GitHub about exactly this.
Okay, right. Yeah, and of course we have the package ecosystem and all sorts of stuff, right?
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. So that's about all of our time, I think. Do we have any other questions for Eric that we wanted to touch on?
No, that's all the questions I wanted to ask.
We pretty much run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us and talking to everybody on our stream. And enjoy the rest of Flutter Live.
Thanks for coming up and talking. So.
And you can take that with you and exit right up there. Thank you so much.
Well, I've got a couple of questions.
What else do we have?
Well, let me ask this one. This is a question. It says, can we design and develop apps for e-commerce businesses with Flutter? This is one of those questions where I didn't have to pay the person to ask this, but I would have.
Yeah, the answer is people are already doing it, right?
That's right.
Like, Alibaba.
Alibaba is one of the largest e-commerce companies in the world, and they're using Flutter for their app.
Absolutely. We have a sample that might.
That's right.
Okay. So
can we see that?
Yes. So if you watched the keynote, you already saw it a little bit. Let me go ahead and pull up.
That's right. When Will got up and talked about material design,
let me get this zoomed in so everybody can see it.
And it has an e-commerce app built into it.
So we have in the Material team built several samples to show off what Material could do, the new stuff that launched in IO 18, and how well you can put it to work in Flutter. And one of their demos is Shrine, which is a shopping app. And so we took the work that they did, and we're like, hey, let's put a little state management into this, and we made a new scoped model with it, and put a shopping cart into it, and put it on the DevRel samples repo. So it's up at Flutter/samples. You can look for Shrine. You can download that right now. And if we go into my laptop, there we go. Gradle's just about done. This is an example of an e-commerce app. And so I can just click through next here and go right on. So we have a list of products just like you would expect. I think Will is himself, yes, he is in here himself as a model, because we needed a model that day, I guess, for the photos team. And so you can click on things to add them to your shopping cart, and you can see the Material team, of course, has put a lot of time into this. The expanding bottom sheet for the preview of what's in the cart, I know they're very proud of because it looks so cool. But you can add things just like that. I can click on the bottom sheets and it expands into the cart. I can come in here and take things out of it. There's a model, managing the state of what's in the cart, tallying up things. But yeah, obviously e-commerce is a huge sector of the mobile app ecosystem. It's very important. So certainly Flutter, the team had that in mind as they were building everything out for Flutter. And works great. What else we got?
I've got some live questions.
Okay.
Let me pick one. Is there a way to embed native UI? The example they use, can I put Apple Pay into an app and have a Flutter button that invokes Apple Pay?
Sure. Yeah, we can talk a little bit about that. So the Google Maps plugin you already saw and that Philip demonstrated, that's using under the hood something called Platform View. And so Platform View, there's a Android view, and there's a UIKit view. And these are the widgets that sort of manage a native platform view and sort of fit it into the world of Flutter. And so those are available. You could go and try them out on your view and see how that goes. There's a bit of a cost to the work they have to do under the hood, so I wouldn't just start throwing 30 of them into every Flutter screen that you have. That wouldn't be a good implementation. But if you have one specific view that you really need to have, like a control that you've invested a lot of time in building, or something from the platform, you really need a particular piece of the platform UI, those have been added now, and you can start putting them to work in your Flutter apps. Okay. Platform views.
I have another question. This is from Seattle. So another question from the U.S. They're wondering if there are any continuous integration and continuous deployment options for Flutter apps.
So I think we got scooped a little bit by the keynote, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously Nevercode in the keynote, you saw their solution for this. And they partnered with
This actually came in after the keynote, though.
Maybe they wanted to know what the whole
I
landscape
don't know.
was.
Yeah. Okay.
There are more. For our DevRel samples, for example, we use Travis because it's free for open source projects, and it works great with Flutter. There's also Cirrus, I believe, the engineering team uses for the SDK itself. They have some really intense use cases for advanced testing, and they have found that fits their particular needs. But yeah, I mean, Flutter, the tools for Flutter, they run on Linux, they run on the command line. You can run tests from the command line very easily, so they fit very well into CI/CD systems.
Right. I don't think that's a problem at all. And I'm sure there's going to be additional ones. So, I mean, one thing that we keep wanting to point out is that if there's something that you want that is not available yet, you can actually go in and file an issue for Flutter.
That is true. Yeah, you have access. You know, it's not only is Flutter open in terms of the code and being able to see it, it's developed in the open. So you can actually go in and take a look at what the team's working on.
That's right. You could do it yourself too. Yeah.
You can also do that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, here's a good one. Here's a short one. How about Dart on the server side?
We are kind of already touched on.
I know, right? We already touched on that, but you know, like, yes, and you know, you can see that. I said it that question just because I wanted to emphasize that Dart is a general purpose programming language. Mm-hmm. It does run. I mean, you know, as you said earlier, we are focusing on mobile apps right now, but there are people who use Dart, including us on the server, who use it for web apps and so forth. And you've seen some of that come out this time, and I think it's only going to get better. And in fact, you're going to start seeing it on more and more devices as well. So that's good. In fact, you know, let me continue with this one. Here's a question from India. It says, what are the new widgets that are about to come out in the next Flutter update? I love that.
Sure. Let's touch on this. Let me go into our... So the easiest way to know what the Flutter, because we get this a lot, you know, what's the team working on, what's coming out soon, and the easiest way is to bypass us and go straight to the team itself through GitHub. So if I go to the main Flutter repo here, you'll notice open issues for feature requests and bug fixes. You can take a look at those. But there's also the projects tab, which the team uses. So you can see what they're working on sort of in real time. The IAP plugin, you can see here. There's a lot of stuff being done with Cupertino by Zhao and Matt, the engineers working on that. Add to app, you can see the work on that is nearing the end of its sprint, and some other things. So you can come in here, you yourself can come in, just see what the team is working on, and that might well answer your question. If you don't see the thing that you think is really important, there's likely an issue open for it already. If not, you can create one. If there is one, go in and put a comment on it and say, I'm building with Flutter, this is important to me because I need it for this use case. You can put a thumb up on it. The team really loves that feedback. They really like getting that and being able to feel like they're staying close to what the community needs. So it's very valuable for them.
So I'm going to change gears just a little bit because I just noticed somebody standing nearby.
Okay,
so let
me
read the question first.
All right.
So the question is, what is the best way to achieve state management in a Flutter app? And
it's Philip.
And well, let me finish the question.
Okay.
I said they're currently using Scope Model, but it seems like it's maybe not the best fit for their app.
Okay.
So they want to know what's the right thing to do.
Philip, come and join us.
Mr.
You are the perfect person for this one.
Philip, here.
Please. Hey. Fresh from the keynote, this is Philip, everybody. One of our DevRel compatriots.
I think they already know him.
Careful there. I think you might have kicked a video cable for a second.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to make all the guys in the back go nuts.
Okay.
So careful there. Actually, I think it did just disconnect.
So the question, there was somebody who was using Scope Model, but they said it's maybe not the right fit for their app right now. So
yes, and I know state management is a mission of yours. So
yes.
How do you get to Scope Model in the first place, and then what might you go on to after that?
Right. So yeah, I think a lot of people are asking about state management all the time, and that's a really good question. I don't think there's one answer to everyone, and it always depends on many things. It depends on the app. It depends on the team and previous experience, all that. I think if you're I think Scope Model is a really good start, and for many people it is what they need because I think it's pretty simple to understand. It gives you all the things that you want. It is a little less reactive than maybe some people would want. So a lot of people will kind of use something like reactive extensions. Maybe some people are super into Redux, and then we have a Flutter Redux package, right? Community build. So I mean, it depends on what you want, what your inputs are, and stuff like this. It's not really better.
I think it really just depends on like what are the patterns you've used before and enjoyed. You know, I think that is one of the biggest factors. If you've used Redux in the past and really loved it, there's nothing wrong with using Redux, right?
Yeah.
Works great with Flutter. If you're used to streams, then block things like that are very, very good.
Yes, and it's also, I would be really interested to know like what are the limitations that this person sees, because obviously there are things that could, like for example, scope model doesn't really work that well with streams, I guess.
So it notifies, it rebuilds widgets sort of on its own way rather than providing streams the way Block would or something else.
So like you can still use it, right? Like, but it kind of feels dirty to be like listening to a stream and then notify listeners. So everything is possible. I guess I don't have a single answer to that.
Which is fine, right?
Do you think in the future there might be like different ways of managing state that we don't even know about yet?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay.
I was actually researching. Well, I'm always researching it, and last week I found out that there's a new thing that is pretty impressive. It's not completely baked yet, but it's always something new, and I think Flutter is very young, so it will have these kind of like a plethora of different ways to manage state. And in the end, like many people would tell you, state management is building your app, right? Like next to, sure, you will build your layout and stuff like this, but it's also after that, it's how do I manage the state of the app? And so you could go all the way from just using state and stateful widgets, which I don't recommend, but it can be.
You can go a long way just with stateful widgets and sort of rolling your own. That's not necessarily a bad way to go for a lot of people coming sort of onboarding themselves with Flutter.
Yeah. I think what we are not doing a really good job at is that many people will just start Flutter. They will see the clicking app where you're like incrementing the counter, and they think, oh, this is the way to manage state, and that's true for a single widget, but it's often not true for the app.
Right.
And we're not really doing much to like tell people, maybe at least do something with scope model, right?
Yeah, and I was actually talking to somebody earlier, and they made a point, and I think I agree with it, but I wanted your opinion on it. They said that Flutter sort of takes things far enough that we can actually invent new types of state management that are specific to Flutter and to Dart because of the characteristics of Dart being, functional and having streams and things like that.
It's just so it's mind-blowing. I was recently last week I was talking to a person who came from Android, right? And for many people like that, for me when I came to Flutter first and to reactive programming, it is kind of a change of mindset,
right?
And so again, we probably should be more better at explaining, like, okay, so for example, it's not a big deal if you rebuild the whole app once in a while. It's like, for an Android person, for example, like me, like many years ago.
That would be frightening.
They would be like, you're not. I hope that you're not recreating the whole UI from scratch. But in Flutter, sure, why not?
Right.
Yeah, that's what you do all the time.
Right.
So we need to let you go, but we did have one question that came up, I think from
yes, an important question.
a dozen different people. They have requested, they want you to know that they'd love to see the source for your timeline app, if it's at all possible.
Yeah. It's not, I have to say, it's not just mine, it's also 2 dimensions, right? And we are going to release it, but right now it's a little bit ugly. So we want to like make it a little nicer for us. It was that like last minute crunch that kind of kill.
So what you're telling us, it will be available.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
just not
yeah.
telling us when, but hopefully soon.
Yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much. Please take the microphone with you.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you for coming on.
out.
Thanks.
Well, do you have any live stream questions?
Yeah, let's take a look at the live stream here. People recommending their favorite approaches to state management.
Yeah?
Yeah. Let's see.
Well, that's good. We'll have people sort of arguing for different forms of state management.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
And here is one. How does Flutter compare to React Native, which is something we've heard before.
This is an excellent question.
Yeah. So that's
It
This has
is
come up.
important to compare different products to know their. But what I worry about is that sometimes it turns into sort of an argument about what's better, and I don't think that helps anybody. Me personally, I think React Native was actually a brilliant thing for them to do. They took something that was made for the web, React, and they said, "Hey, we could take that technology and apply it to native apps," and that's a brilliant thing. Flutter is similar in some ways in that we're also reactive, but it's also solving a slightly different problem. Yeah. And I don't expect React Native to go away. I wouldn't tell people, oh, if you're using React Native, just use Flutter. They're for different things, and that's a good thing. And you were talking about something like that the other day.
Well, yeah. I mean, this question comes up a lot, and I think it. Obviously, we believe in Flutter, the SDK, and what it can do, and that it can play an important role in software and helping people. But it's still just one more tool in everybody's tool belt, right? Like, the fact that Flutter exists doesn't mean that React Native isn't a good way to make apps. Obviously, for many, many developers, it is. And the same is true of native development on iOS and Android. Those things didn't stop being good ways to build apps. It's just that Flutter is another way to do it. And it's, we think it's a really good one. And that's about it. It's two positives rather than
So I've noticed some other people standing by.
Who's in the corner?
Let me say we've got several questions that came from people that, to me, are more questions about the community. So, like, for example, one person asked, when are there going to be a way to play sounds in Flutter and stuff like that?
And there is a way to play sounds in Flutter.
Yeah, there are plugins in the pub directory for playing sounds and stuff like that. And as far as I know, they were all written by third parties.
The community, open source developers, and we have one.
Yeah.
we have one right here. I can see it. Go on, Simon. So some of you may know this man. That's our next guest. This is Simon Lightfoot, a London local. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Excellent.
Welcome to London.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, we were just talking about the community, and can you talk a little bit about your involvement with the community? And
I mean, we've done a lot to sort of build the online conversation that sort of Flutter has sort of invoked in everyone, I think.
Right.
We've started up the study group. We've now got the Flutter community medium.
That's right.
And everyone is welcome to publish articles. I mean, we invite everyone to submit articles, and we'll review them, edit them, and make sure they're set out on a schedule, which really helps in sort of making sure that everyone's getting information about Flutter that everyone really needs to sort of get going immediately.
But how do we let the community know that, they shouldn't ask us when is Google going to build this or that? This is going to succeed if we all work together on things like that.
I mean, this is it. I mean, what we've seen, especially with what we've actually started up is the Flutter community GitHub organization.
Right.
And what we've done is any of these projects that the community have built that want it owned by the community, right? So this sort of covers that scenario of a developer no longer wants to maintain their open source project.
Right.
They started up as an idea saying, we want this on our Flutter app. I made this one app. Now it's out there. Who's going to maintain this product?
Right.
People submit PRs, people submit fixes. No one's merging them. So we're here to help.
That's great. That's an awesome thing to do.
Well, I see another community. Do you mind if I swap you out for Hillel? Okay, why don't you
I'll see you guys later.
Pass the baton to him on the way. Thank you so much, Simon.
We have another community.
Yes.
This is Hillel. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thank you.
for having me.
So, Internet, hello, Internet. Probably met before.
Welcome.
Nice to see you here.
So when I saw you, I was happy because you were the guy behind itsallwidgets.com,
That's right. That's right.
Which is great. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So It's All Widgets is a open site for listing Flutter apps. Any developer, any of the world is free to publish their app. Doesn't need to be in the App Store. Doesn't need to be open source. If you're proud of something you built and want to showcase it, you can submit it to the site, and we're happy to show it.
So, and we all need a place to do that occasionally, to crow about something that we've built. How many apps do you have?
So far, we're about 200. But I think, and that's just in the site. Obviously, in Flutter, there are thousands of apps on a listing. To me, more interesting than the number is the rate of growth, where it took a few months to get to 100. From 100 to 200, it took about half that time.
Oh,
and
wow.
we're just seeing this exponential growth.
So
It's
your half-life
accelerating.
is going down. Yeah,
Exactly.
Well, what are some of the most interesting ones you have? I mean, you've got 200 apps.
Good question. So what I find interesting is when an app is submitted, it gets shared with the Twitter followers. And every once in a while, someone will message me and say, "This app, it can't be in Flutter. It doesn't look like a Flutter app." And I get nervous, and I go scrambling, and I message the developer. And every time it turns out, yeah, it's a Flutter app. And the thing I think I've taken from this is just there's no look of a Flutter app. A Flutter app can look like anything. Really just limited by your imagination. And if you look at the listing of apps, you can see they're all just completely different.
Awesome.
I think
So
we
you-
need a new campaign. What does a Flutter app look like?
Right.
Anything
Pretty
you
much.
want.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You also did a podcast, or started a podcast series recently, right?
That's right. So It's a Widgets initially was going to be a podcast. Thomas Burkhardt came up with a
And then
great
it
name.
morphed into a website.
Pretty much. At the time, Simon Lightfoot and Scott Stoll were also working on their own podcast. We kind of teamed up, pivoted to this website. Now that the site's kind of finished, I've had time to go back to the podcast idea. So we've just started working on it this past few weeks. It's been a great response.
Who have you had on so far?
That's some amazing developers. Marco, Rohan, Omar, Groovin Ship Dev. And if you go to itsawidgets.com, you can see the list. If you click the podcast button on the top right. And anyone watching, you're welcome to be on the podcast. Just go to the site. Anyone can submit a request to be interviewed. And the idea is, the goal is just for developers to share their Flutter experiences. And be able to say kind of what their backgrounds are, what they're learning, and also share best practices and tips and tricks.
Cool. So we've reached the end of our second block. So I'm asking you to stay right here. And one of the things I wanted to make sure to mention, the thing that I love about itsallwidgets.com is that you can filter based on whether the app is open source or not.
Right.
And then when you go in to look at the app, it'll have a link to the source, which is the greatest thing ever.
Absolutely.
So you can go look at it, itsallwidgets.com, look through the apps. When you see something like, oh, I would love to know how they did that, you can go see how they did that, and it's great.
If I could just add one thing.
Sure.
I just want to say that these projects obviously take time and resources, and I'm incredibly lucky to work with two amazing partners, Shalom and Dave, who I love very much. I'm incredibly blessed to work with you guys. We work at Invoice Ninja, and they've allowed me time to work on these projects. Still doing a lot of Flutter work with these side projects, but I think really help the community, help myself learn more, and it's just been a great experience.
Excellent. It's a lot of fun.